Karolina, thank you for coming from Santa Cruz. She teaches photography at UC Santa Cruz. She's going to talk about Unseen California, so I will not mention it, but she's the Director of Graduate Studies in the Environmental Art Plus Social Practice Program at UC Santa Cruz. She has started several initiatives. As I said at the beginning, my introduction is very short, but if you go to lasertalks.com, you will find links, extended bio, and links to the speaker's website, where you can find a lot more. Okay, all yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. And I've been following Laser Talks for so many years, and it's really exciting because my work primarily focuses in on the ways in which art and science and technology can be thought of as a collaborative state of research through the field of the arts. One of the projects that has emerged from my teaching at the University of California, Santa Cruz, is this research initiative, which is called Unseen California. And so I'll be presenting the first initial outputs of that research today. So thank you for being here. Unseen California's mission is to support emerging and mid-career artists and to highlight the indispensable role artists play in representing our relationships with the natural world. It aims to contribute to the ecological understanding of California and the Earth by establishing and advocating for the vital role the arts play in our climate-impacted future. Some of the research questions that we are posing are, how do we communicate arts and science-inspired stories to a diverse audience in the 21st century? How can interdisciplinary arts, ecology, and humanities teams address complex California problems? And in what ways can arts engage with science and technology in intriguing ways? What is the benefit of producing bodies of work which synthesize the arts, ecology, and humanities, and what can that synthesis accomplish? Curated from a range of cultural producers, Unseen California invites us all to learn about ways in which the arts play an urgent role in addressing issues of access, equality, social and environmental justice. I launched this initiative in 2021 and with the intention of it to be a 10-year program. Unseen California has multiple facets. These include immersive arts field research across what is called the University of California's natural reserves, by cohorts of professional artists researching at these sites, teaching, and engagement with the public. I invited 4 photographers from a wide range of backgrounds to join me on this initial launch of this initiative. The University of California's natural reserve system consists of 42 sites across California, encompassing 47,000 acres of land with over 50 miles of protected coastline. The mission of the UCNRS is to contribute to the understanding and stewardship of the Earth and its natural systems by supporting research, teaching, and public outreach. Due to the reserve's designation as research sites, Unseen California asks artists in the reserves, they have a unique opportunity to be in conversation with and collaboration with science researchers, and to utilize the resource available at each reserve's field station to support their own fieldwork. No other field site network can match the size and the scope and the ecological diversity of the University of California's natural reserve system. It's the largest network of field stations in the world. The unique thing about the artist residencies are they last for a lengthy 2 years. Most artist residencies are a month or 6 months at a national park. And so this allows artists to visit multiple sites that they choose, to engage with over the seasonal durational time, but also to establish relationships with other fellow researchers. I'm going to speak about the artists that are part of this first cohort. Artist Aspen Mays has been looking at the marks made by acorn woodpeckers at the Hastings Natural Reserve located in Carmel Valley. Birds are industriously storing acorns in the bark of oak trees, which are called granaries. What do these birds, these acorn woodpeckers, know about the future? Mays asks. Scientists at this reserve, wondered if the woodpeckers would avail themselves to pre-drilled holes, which you're seeing here on the right. It turns out that the birds didn't mind at all, having their burdens eased a bit. They filled the holes just as they did creating their own granaries on oak trees. Aspen has been making rubbings of this decommissioned boards from a scientific study, using scraps of cyanotype blueprint paper and adding her marks to the birds' marks. So you see the artist's work on the left-hand side. Mays collaborated with UCSC's Initiative for Drone Education and Research to gather 3D drone images of the granary trees. This specific tree became of particular interest to the artist. And here you see a 3D image woodpecker granary, and Mays is centered with her inspiration of this individual tree. She had the goal of using this drone, which was a new drone that we tested, that could get incredibly close to the tree and also isolate it from its partner grove trees around it. Mays was interested in being able to have a one-to-one relationship similar to a bird to the granary, but also to be able to think of this three-dimensional object and to think about what would it mean to make it a two-dimensional mapping of this granary. Here, Mays is also working with charcoal and rice paper to create a rubbing of a barn that the birds also have completely taken over as their own granary tree. So now we've moved from a three-dimensional tree to a three-dimensional barn, which is man-made, but also using wood. And the woodpeckers have created their own granaries even there. And so here we rented a cherry picker and created a rubbing, a one-to-one mapping of the entire barn, which took much labor, also the artist's hand, and also relating to a one-to-one relationship with the impacts of the acorn woodpecker holes. This is an installation at Headlands in Marin of the actual barn laid flat on a two-dimensional surface of an old basketball court. It started raining when we had the cherry picker, so what you're seeing is the missed part on the right and the left-hand side, and then we actually were able to come back and finish the rubbing. Mays also wanted to see something invisible like radio waves carrying a weather forecast, static filling a space of the gallery. Her custom weather radios here are covered in fragments of abalone shells, a disguise inspired by a trip to Santa Cruz Island or Limu with artist Mercedes Dorame. Mercedes Dorame was astonished by the abundance of living abalone on Limu, the Chumash name for Santa Cruz Island, the site of Santa Cruz Island off the Channel Islands. Abalone are an indicator of an ecosystem's overall health and an important resource for the Chumash, and Tongva, which is Mercedes' native First Peoples, and of all First Peoples of coastal California. The coasts of mainland California, close enough to be visible from the island on a clear day, are not as abundant with abalone anymore. And so the abalone on Limu serve as a counter to loss and a model of survivance. Mercedes returned to Limu many times over the course of the 2-year residency to photograph abalone and their shifting locations, their shifting environments, and witnessing their thriving presence. Here's an installation of some of the resulting work that was exhibited at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And another component that Mercedes took time to do, this is Mercedes at the Getty Research Institute at the main atrium, is that she was able to 3D scan abalone shells from Limu and then work with an art fabricator in Los Angeles to create these sculptures of abalone, pointing to the near Channel Islands from the Getty Research Institute Vista Points, to pay attention to something that at a large scale and to call attention to stewardship and also the resources of abalone. This is artist Tara Karlic. I'm going to play a 2-minute video of her working in the field. She is working in Big Sur, which is, the reserve there is called Big Creek Natural Reserve.
I was already working on a project called Master Rituals, and it's engaged with the history of landscape photography in the West, and I was particularly interested in Ansel Adams and Edward Weston, and I wanted a site that was closely related, and I found this. I found that Ansel Adams gave the inaugural speech to this reserve that we're on right now. So I found the speech, I found a copy of it, and in special collections, and it's really, it's actually, it talks about the future of this site, kind of thinking about how that speech contemplates a future which we are now in, but also post the Dolan fire. So I thought that this was a particularly, like it was 2021 when we started, so 2020 was when the fire kind of destroyed a lot of the redwoods and the trails, and I really wanted to examine how the landscape changed post-fire, but I also wanted to use this text to reperform the speech or the text in amidst the aftermath of the fire. And I tried it, and I was like, I think this is the wrong place for this text. Like, I want to take it outside, and maybe that's going to be later. And I just kind of responded to my surroundings and let myself kind of make weird. Well, you know, I don't think of myself as a landscape photographer, and as I was learning how to see with my tools. You know, I was learning how the camera sees in the forest, which I've never done. And I thought it was really fascinating. Like, I thought it was the limits of the camera, and also my body's relationship to muscle memory, and you know, working with an 8x10 in the studio is very different than like hiking with an 8x10. Eventually I came to this idea that like, I need to go down in format, I need to be more mobile, I need the camera to be more of an extension of my body. And
so Tara is now professor at UCLA, but I'll talk about where everyone teaches maybe at the end. Tara focuses on this performance, which she calls Forest Path, in which she uses her body, repetition, and rephotography to engage directly with the ground. She reproduced that trail, which you see here in her studio, all the branches and leaf litter and the forest floor in 27 footsteps, and they are printed to a 1-to-1 scale. She also installed the forest path in her studio, where performances continue to unfold. What you're seeing here is a documentation of that performance that then is created into a contact sheet of those image stills. she's referencing a scholar whose work, she's referencing Victor Bergen's photograph from 1967. Both she and Bergen draw on Bourget's 1946 short story On the Exactitude in Science, in which a one-to-one map becomes so precisely detailed that it replaces the original. This is an installation where she's reperforming the path in a gallery, but it's also on her cell phone, so it's also a one-to-one relationship of her relating the cell phone to recording. In the arid terrain of the Granite Mountains Desert Research Station, which is in the Mojave Desert, artist Dion Lee considers wayfinding in the desert, but by watching her feet rather than by scanning the horizon. Here she is pictured on site working with a video camera to generate footage and also loading film for photographic printmaking. A hand-knotted rope as a pace counter, the shadow of a dowsing rod, a stick to divine the presence of water beneath the earth's surface moving across the sand. She asks, what does the ground know? What does it want us to know? She has been also thinking about plant fossils as the first photographs, an impression laid down in time, so much like the plant themselves, not yet entirely different. I myself placed motion sensor forest field cameras on the incinerated hillsides after the Dolan fire swept through in 2020, at also the Big Creek Natural Reserve. I knew that the movements of animals would trigger the cameras, but I also understood that after such a massive blaze, the land itself would be on the move. Ash, dirt, rocks, blown by winter storms. Mostly what the cameras captured was erosion in the act, a landscape sliding downward, shifting upward, actively taking shape. Here is one feeding path, and so what you're now seeing on the right-hand side is the path that no longer exists for the animal trails. And this generated a 48-minute film, editing thousands and thousands of hours, and created a 48-minute film that has 4 different sort of episodes or episodic moments within it. And it all really became about erosion. I used footage from those forest field cameras to create what are called film stills. What you're seeing is the film flipped horizontally or vertically on a cleat hanging. And so the markings on that image are actually water, leaves, or different debris flying in front of the motion sensor camera. And the sensor is so slow that it can't actually capture or freeze motion with the infrared light. I also was photographing, I've been working at this site for 9 years, and particularly thinking about botanists and how they think about a plot of land as a research site of something that's in or out. This is a photographic image of a meadow where I've identified different invasive species and native species to California. And then on the right-hand side, what you're seeing is that photograph etched into a copper plate. Speaking about conductors, etched into a copper plate, then printed as a photo gravure and hand painted with etching inks. I then took that image and those film stills and installed them in this installation in various formats. So we're looking at the film stills from the fire and the meadow that no longer exists. Here's a different version of that installation. Another component of my research across the coastal fog of California, from Point Reyes to Santa Cruz Island, is I installed copper plates 24 of them that were inspired from a scientific fog data collector or a fog harvester. And I encountered this mesh machine that measures 4 millimeters of water once it falls into its sensor. And scientists are working to think about how are we going to deal with when there is no more fog on our coastlines? And I thought, well, there is no visual really for this fog data collecting. And so I thought of these copper plates as ways in which that they will alchemize and create their own visual fog data collecting mechanisms after being installed for a duration of time across these reserves. This is at Younger Lagoon, which is in Santa Cruz. This is Santa Cruz Island. Another component of our research through this inaugural cohort was to establish a relationship to think about knowledge. As academics or as practitioners, photography is only 150 years old. That's a new medium, right? When you think about who has collected archives, who has created collections, what work you've been exposed to in the arts, what works you haven't been exposed to in the arts. We are also in conversation with the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, which has the largest landscape photography collection, Western landscape photography collection in the world. And so what does it mean to create a new archive that looks at other voices that have been maybe left out of those institutions? And so we're here looking at the collections in that institution itself. We also gathered and all of the researchers each summer of the residency to record our process and to produce a documentary film. Again, to create an accessible archive of the works produced by the Unseen California research cohorts. We see this as a way to invite audiences, the general public, to witness the creative process of artistic practice, to think about various research methodologies specific to each artist and their resulting artworks. We also made our work public through publication and different group exhibitions. Here's an installation. We had an exhibition in New York City and Manhattan, and also this is currently up in Los Angeles. We published a quite experimental publication and entitled Language Has No Weather, Field Notes from Unseen California, and it's a limited edition risograph printed book featuring our works and text contributions by myself and Dr. Shana Lopez, who's the curator of photography from SF MoMA. I brought some of those books for you to view today if you want to flip through them. And we've just now invited our next cohort, and next week, hopefully, we'll be announcing those awardees because it was an open call. And we're going to have a whole new group of people working across these field stations across California and engaging with students and creating new work. Thank you.